Okay, so I'm going to start filling out my watercolor pencil techniques. We're going to be using what's called aqua sticks. So these are kind of like a watercolor crayon, and when you run water over top of them, they turn into watercolor. So you can use them for a lot of different things. So we're going to start with the flat wash, just because that one is super simple. So I'm going to start with my aqua stick, and I'm going to use it just like a crayon, and I'm just going to give it a nice kind of light, even coloring. I'm going to stay inside my lines, keep it nice and neat, but I'm just going to fill in the box with my crayon. And then once I have that done, I'm going to take my brush and my water. I'm going to make sure my brush is clean. Our brush is going to be clean the entire time, so we're only going to be using just water the entire time on our brush. And then I'm basically just going to paint over it with the water, and you'll see that it starts to turn into watercolor. I'm going to bring it out to the edge, grab a little bit more water, and the more you go over it, the more it kind of blends together and you lose that kind of crayon look. But so then it blends together into a nice little wash of watercolor. Okay? Alright, so moving forward, I'm going to do my graded wash. So I'm doing a value scale. I'm going to want a light value and then a dark value and then all those in between. So I'm going to fill this out kind of exactly how I would do when I was doing a normal value scale. So I'm going to start really, really lightly in this box. I'm not putting any pressure down. I'm just very, very lightly filling in this first box. Super, super light, okay? And then on the second box, I can start to apply a little bit more pressure. I'm still not doing a lot, just making it a tiny bit darker. On the third box, I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure. I feel like this is kind of a normal amount of pressure that I'm applying that you would use with like a crayon. And then on this fourth box, I can start to get a little bit darker, so I'm putting down more pressure, pressing down harder, making sure it fills in that space. And then the last box, of course, I'm going to press nice and hard so that it really fills up my space. I'm staying inside of my boxes, keeping it nice and neat. Alright, so now I have a nice little gradient from light to dark. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush with water on it, and I'm going to start in the lightest box, and I'm just going to do the same thing I did with my flat wash and just start to fill that in. Okay? I'm going to move on to my next box, and you can see it's slowly getting darker because I have more pigment down. I'm going into my next box. And this one. And then my last box. And I might need a little bit more water for my last one. And you'll see when you fill it in all the way and then you put the water over top, you get a really nice dark value. So then I have my light value all the way to my dark value. All right, I'm going to rinse off my brush and get ready for the next one. So the next one is going to be a graded wash. I'm basically going to do the same thing that I just did, except I'm going to just not do it in the boxes. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm going to start really, really lightly and just start filling in this little area. Again, I'm not really putting any pressure down. You can't even see it because I'm pressing so lightly. So I'm going really, really light. And then as I move down towards the other end, I'm starting to add more pressure and make it darker as I go down, because then I want over here to be super dark. So I'm going to start adding in some more, make it really dark over here. And then I've got a nice gradation from light to dark. So then it should look like that. And then I'm going to take my wet paintbrush again. I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm not going to move from dark to light, because then I'm going to pull all of this dark color into my light area and it's going to ruin it. So instead, I'm going to go from light to dark. So I'm going to start on this side, and then I'm going to start moving it over, just bringing my brush back and forth, pulling the color And then when I get into the last part, blend everything together, and then I've got a nice smooth gradation from light to dark. Right, I'm going to rinse my brush again, make sure my brush is nice and clean, no residual color on it, and I'm ready for my next one. So next I'm going to blend colors, and I'm going to do this 2 times. So I'm going to choose colors that are similar to each other, because if I were to use like a, let's say a green and a red, when those mix together, they're going to turn pretty brown. So that's not what I'm going for. So I'm going to use this red, and I will use an orange. Okay, so I'm going to start on this side with my red, and I'm going to press down hard on the edge, and then as I get to the middle, I'm going to lighten up a little bit, and I'm going to go a little bit more than halfway. So a little bit over half, and I've got it darker on one side, and then it gets lighter towards the middle. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with my orange. So I'm going to start darker on the edge, nice pressure, and then as I get closer to the middle, I'm loosening up on my pressure, and it's getting lighter. And then I'm overlapping that into the red so that those colors will blend together when I add the water. So I'm taking this a little bit further than half, so in the middle it has both colors. Okay, and then I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to start on one side with the red, and I'm going to slowly bring it over and kind of mash that together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse my brush, make sure it's clean, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And then in the middle, I can kind of blend these two together. So I can use my brush and go back and forth and blend these two colors together in the middle. And then I've got a nice little gradation. Okay, so I'm going to do one more color. I'm going to do, let's do green and blue. So I'm going to use my green on one side, and I'm pressing down, putting some pressure on the one side, and then I'm going to get lighter towards the middle, and I'm going to go a little bit past the middle, and then just make sure I have a nice gradation. Okay? And then I'm going to take my blue, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to make it darker on one side, and then it's going to get lighter towards the middle, and then go over top of that green. So I have green and blue in the middle. And then I can take my brush, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So start on one side, activate the aqua stick, bring it to the middle. I'm going to clean my brush, and then do the same thing on the other side. So going like that, and then blending them together in the middle. So then I've got a nice little gradation from blue to green. All right, moving forward. My next one is going to be, okay, back to it. So for this one, I'm going to start, it wants a hard edge, so I'm going to start by filling in half of the box, and I'm just going to fill it in with one solid color. Okay. And then I'm going to take my paintbrush. Just kidding, I'm actually going to take my other color. I'm going to do my other color in this other box. Right next to each other. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and I'm just going to color in the yellow. And so what it wants me to do is color in the yellow, and then stop and wait for that yellow to dry before I do the orange. So I'm going to come back to that. So moving on to the next one, I'm going to do my soft edge. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick two different colors, and I'm going to color one half of it with this color, choosing red. And then I'm going to color the other half with another color. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and on the red, I'm going to go ahead and paint over that. Going a little bit into the blue. And then I'm going to rinse my brush, clean it off, and while this one is still wet, I'm going to paint the other one. So that's going to give us that soft edge where they kind of blur together a little bit. Just kind of go over it a little bit. And then I have that nice little soft edge where it kind of blends together and turns a little bit purple. Okay. And then I'm going to move on to my sphere. So I'm going to be shading my sphere the same way that I would shade it with drawing pencils. So I'm going to get my aqua stick, and I'm going to start shading just like you would a normal circle. So I'm going to start with my highlight, and I'm going to start with really light pressure, really, really light, and then I'm using circular motions. And as I move down, I'm going to get darker, more pressure, and so it's darker at the bottom to show value. Lefty, so this isn't easy, but, and then up, 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 and then it gets lighter. And so now my sphere looks pretty shaded. It looks all right, but then I'm going to take my brush, and again, I'm going to start in my light area, because if I start in the dark area, it's going to push all that dark pigment into my nice light space. So instead, I'm going to start in the light area and just slowly start moving my brush in circular motions and starting to move that watercolor around, move the pigment around, and then you can see I end up with a nice little shaded sphere, and it looks nice in 3D. Alright, and then down here, I'm going to do the wet paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my paper first, just with water, fill in that little box, and then I can take my aqua stick and I can color over top of it, and you'll notice it's kind of easy to color, so I'm not pressing down very hard. I'm just kind of coloring into the water, and it just kind of mixes together on the page, and it leaves kind of that paper texture or crayon texture behind, but that's the point of that one. And then to finish off, I'm going to finish my hard edge. So now that this is dry, I'm going to go ahead and take my paintbrush, and I'm going to go over that orange, and I'm going to go right up to the yellow. And then since this one was dry, I've got a nice hard edge in between those two colors. So instead of them blending together while they were both wet, I've got this nice hard edge separating them. So yeah, that is aqua sticks.